Shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug. We are the Wakened by Yahuwah Assembly and Yahuwah Almighty Yahushua Messiah. So we are going to be doing we are actually getting back to continuing our First Chronicles studies as we have been doing. I apologize for my camera not being on right now. I might try to get that on while my mom reads our first reading here. So we left off last time, I think, going through, what, 4 to 6, I think was the last one. So we're going to be doing First Chronicles, Yahuwah willing, Yahusha willing, 7 to 9 today. Mom, would you like to start us off?
Sure. The sons of Issachar, Tola, Pua, Yashub, and Shimron, 4 in all. The sons of Tola, Utzi, Raphiah, Yeriel, Yamai, Yipsam, and Samuel, heads of their families. During the reign of David, the descendants of Tola, listed as fighting men in their genealogy, numbered 22,600. The sons of Utzi, Yitzrahiah. The sons of Yitzrahiah, Miguel, Obadiah, Joel, and Yeshia. All 5 of them were chiefs. According to their family genealogy, they had 36,000 men ready for battle, for they had many wives and children. The relatives who were fighting men, belonging to all the clans of Issachar, as listed in their genealogy, were 87,000 in all. Benjamin. 3 sons of Benjamin, Bela, Becher, and Gediah. The sons of Bela, Etzbon, Utzi, Uziel, Yeremot, and Yeri, heads of families, 5 in all. Their genealogical record listed 2,034 fighting men. The sons of Becher, Sepmira, Joash, Eleazar, Elionai, Omri, Yeremot, Abiyah, Anatot, and Elinet. All these were the sons of Becher. Their genealogical record listed the heads of families and 20,200 fighting men. The sons of Yedial, Bilhan. The sons of Bilhan, Yoah, Benjamin, Ehud, Kenanah, Zephon, Tarshish, and Ahiyashar. All these sons of Yedial were heads of families. There were 17,200 fighting men ready to go out to war. The Shupites and Hupites were the descendants of Hur, and the Hushites the descendants of Aher. The sons of Naphtali, Yatziel, Uni, Yetzer, and Shilem, his sons by Bilhah. Manasseh. The descendants of Manasseh, Atriel was his descendant through his Aramean concubine. She gave birth to Machir, the father of Gilead. Machir took a wife from among the Hupites and Shupites. His sister's name was Ma'akah. Another descendant was named Setlofadad, who had only daughters. Machir's wife Ma'akah gave birth to a son and named him Perish. His brother was named Sherish, and his sons were Ulam and Rakem. The son of Ulam, Bedan. These were the sons of Gilead, son of Machir, son of Manasseh. His sister Hamolaketh gave birth to Ishad, Ebiezer, and Malach. The sons of Shemitah were Achian, Shechem, Lehi, and Aniah. Ephraim. The descendants of Ephraim.
What verse are we at?
We're at 20, verse 20.
Verse 20, Brother Dennis.
The descendants of Ephraim, Shutelah, Bered his son, Tahat his son, Eliadah his son,
Can we just stop right now? I just want, because Brother Dennis just got in. I just want him to know where we're reading from. So we're reading from Brother Dennis. We're at First Chronicles 7, verse what you said again?
21 now.
Verse 21. So First Chronicles 7, verse 21.
Etzer and Eliad were killed by the native-born men of Gath when they went down to seize their livestock. Their father Ephraim mourned for them many days, and his relatives came to comfort him. Then he lay with his wife again, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. He named him Beriah, because there had been misfortune in his family. His daughter was Shirah, who built lower and upper Beth Horon, as well as Uzzin Shirah. Repha was his son, Resheph his son, Tela his son, Tahan his son, Laden his son, Amihud his son, Alishama his son, Nun his son, and Yahusha his son. Their lands and settlements included Bethel and its surrounding villages, Naaran to the east, Gezer and its villages to the west, and Shechem and its villages all the way to Ayah and its villages along the borders of Manasseh, were Beth Shan, Ta'anak, Megiddo, and Dor, together with their villages. The descendants of Joseph, son of Yashrael, lived in these towns. Asher. The sons of Asher: Yimnah, Yishva, Yishvi, and Beriah. Their sister was Sarah. The sons of Beriah: Heber and Malchiel, who was the father of Birzah. Heber was the father of Yaphlet, Shomer, and Hotham, and of their sister Shua. The sons of Yaphlet: Pasach, Bimhal, and Ashvat. These were Yaphlet's sons. The sons of Shomer: Ai, Roga, Huba, and Aram. The sons of his brother Halem: Sophah, Yimnah, Shelesh, and Amal. The sons of Yophah: Sua, Harnefer, Shual, Beri, Yimrah, Betzer, Had, Shama, Shilshah, Ithran, and Bera. The sons of Yether: Yefuneh, Pispa, and Ara. The sons of Ula, Ara, Haniel, and Ritzia. All these were descendants of Asher, heads of families, choice men, brave warriors, and outstanding leaders. The number of men ready for battle, as listed in their genealogy, was 26,000.
Interesting. The sons of Dan is not mentioned in verse 12. So the Masoretic leaves that out. I'm looking at the Bible Gateway footnotes for the NIV here. First Chronicles 7:12, sons of Dan, Hushim, Siv, Genesis, Bereshit 46, verse 23. Hebrew does not have sons of Dan. See
What
here.
can do?
Wait, what?
Well, he did a couple things. First of all, he or maybe I'm confusing him with Reuben. One of them basically slept with their dad's concubine.
Reuben, yeah.
That would be Reuben. Okay. Dan had a lot of idolatry problems, if I remember correctly, with the sin of Jeroboam and all that. They were part of that, if I'm not mistaken, because Jeroboam was the king of Israel, the northern house. So they would have had a lot to do with that. But just historically, they've had a lot of idolatry problems. Some even claim that Dan, went out and became the what is the stupid, on Fraser Mom, where she talks about Hedgestone and all that. Who are the priests that are at Hedgestone? what do they call themselves? The men in dark robes. What the heck is their name?
Oh, gosh, I'm not sure.
You, I'm trying to think. They're druids.
Druids, right, okay.
There's theories that some of Dan would have became druids. They would have became like pagan priests and all that. That's pretty much, I think, looking at most commentators, even Christian commentators, that they say that's why Dan won't be part of the 144,000. Not that they won't be in the kingdom, but that they won't be. Seems to be their idolatry and lack of repentance from the idolatry, um, as a whole. Like there might have been individuals that repented, but as a whole, as a tribe, I don't think they ever fully came back to Yahuwah. Go ahead, brother.
I'm not certain that that is actually referring to in the LXX that it's referring to the sons of Dan, even though it says Hushim. It's just weird and kind of out of place that verse because it goes from the sons of Benjamin, verse 6, all the way to verse 11. Those are all the sons of Benjamin. And then verse 13, the sons of Naphtali. And the only thing that verse 12 says in the Septuagint, it just says, and Shupim and Hupim were the sons of Ur, and Hushim was the son of Ahor. But it doesn't mention those like anywhere else, unless the Shupim and Hupim, and then the Hushim and the Acher, unless that's actually shown in where it says 46:23 Genesis right there.
Yeah, let me look at that real quick. Genesis 46:23. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with Hushim being part of either Benjamin or Dan's genealogy. I don't remember this guy Hushim.
I do see it in Genesis, in that verse in Genesis, it is there that says one of the sons of Dan was Hushim, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this Hushim is that Hushim.
Yeah, yeah, I think the footnote is basically incorrect. They're trying to make a connection due to the similar names or identical names of two different people. Yeah, that happens a lot. I mean, Hebrew names are very recycled. Yahusha's name was used by 3 or 4 different people. Their family names, they get passed down, to each generation, sometimes by different families, have the same name, have someone that has the same name. So, like Yahusha, son of Yehozadak, had the same first name as Yahusha, son of Nun. Same name, same first name, but 2 different families. And then you have Yahusha of Nazareth, the Messiah, who has this 3 different people from 3 different genealogy, that have the same first name. So to your point, it's, sometimes we try to make connections where there aren't because it just has the same first name. So what Brother Joshua is pointing out here is if you go to the verse that the footnote has it at, it's just a different person with the same name.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to make a connection where there isn't. Genesis 46:23 says that one of the sons of Dan, Hushim. But then you go to this verse that my mom just read, it's talking about a different Hushim. So that's what Brother Yahusha is trying to bring up here. So that happens a lot, though. I've seen that happen a lot. I've made assumptions like that. When you look at the name Zechariah, I think there's a couple of Zechariahs in the scripture. It gets very dicey when you're making presumptions like that. But it's still weird that the Hebrew lacks the son of Dan. I still find that a little weird. Maybe there was a error in the genealogy. That's why they didn't include that. I do know when it starts getting very confusing in the genealogical records in Chronicles, where it seems like it's saying something different sometimes. Yeah,
So basically, it seems like after the Assyrian captivity, we don't see
yeah.
him anymore.
Let's see here. What does this footnote mean? Verse 13. Some Hebrew and LXX manuscripts. What does 13 say? The son of Naphtali. Yes, yeah. Oh, I think what it's saying is that the phrase "the son of Naphtali" is in certain Hebrew manuscripts, and the Septuagint. See Genesis 46:24, Numbers 26:49. Most Hebrew manuscripts. Oh, okay. So there's a difference in a name here. Shalom. So this is where it gets tricky. Oh, okay. They're talking about the spelling. No, that could just be. That could honestly just be the way it's spelled in the Greek. I don't think it means it's a different name. Shalem. Shalem and Shalom sound similar. That I think with Greek too, there's certain letters they don't have. So I don't think that's a different name. I just think that's a different spelling for it. I could be wrong, but that's what it seems like. Um, yeah.
If you go to Genesis 46:21, I think that verse in Chronicles, I think it's actually referring to the sons of Benjamin. But I think it's just leaving out details because it assumes that the reader already knows. If you go to Genesis 46:21, it says the sons of Benjamin were Bala, Bakar, and Ashbal, Gara, Naaman, Ahi, and Rosh, and then Mupim and Hupim and Ard, which is almost identical to the Shupim and Hupim. I can't say that for a fact, but it does seem very, very close.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so let me try to zoom in. I don't know why this print is so dang small.
It would make sense that if you have that lineage with those names in Genesis, and then you have an almost identical lineage for Benjamin in Chronicles, that it would be following the same lineage, that it's Benjamin's children. I mean, that to me, that only makes sense, even though it's a little bit different.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what they're trying to do here, but they're just failing without using context in these footnotes is what's happening. Um yeah, Beriah they claim sounds like Hebrew for misfortune. Some Septuagint, so here's another one, verse 25. Some Septuagint manuscripts, Hebrew does not have his son. I see that a lot with the Masoretic text. They assume the reader should know the context of something. They leave out like details. So like in the regular Hebrew, this verse supposedly would be saying, Rapha, his son, Reseph, and then his son would be left out. So just say Rapha, his son, Reseph, Tela his son, and Tahan his son. For whatever reason, that particular instance with Reseph, they leave out his son. I don't know why. Maybe they're assuming that the reader already knows where this is quoting from. Again, there's no footnote here to show where it would be quoting from, but go ahead, brother.
Hold on.
Okay. Um, okay, so other than that, that's pretty much self-explanatory stuff, guys. It's genealogies. We haven't really gotten to the meat of this book yet, so you're gonna see a lot of genealogical records here. The next one we got is Shaul, I think this is King Shaul, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, so now you're gonna see from Benjamin, because he's a descendant of Benjamin. King Shaul is a descendant of Benjamin, and interestingly enough, I think the apostle Shaul is also a Benjamite. So that's another interesting thing. Yeah, so let's see here. Let's see here. Let's see how long this chapter is.
Not long.
Not long at all, yeah. Let's see here. All right, let me see here. Now Benjamin begot Baal his firstborn, Absael his second son, Ara the third, Nuah the fourth, Rapha the fifth. Sons of Baal were Adir, Gera, and Abihud. Abisai, Numa, Akia, Gera, Safuham. By the way, we're at chapter 8 of First Chronicles right now. And Aruam, verse 6. These were the sons of Aud. These are the heads of the families of them that dwell in Gabia. And they removed them from Makkah, Nathi, and Numa, Akia, Gera. He removed them, begot Asa and Yakiho, and Sarin begot children in the plain of Moab. After that, he had sent away Uzing, Ba'ada, his wives, and he begot his wife Ada, Ulab, Sabia. No. So let's see. Ulab, Sabia, Misa, Melkas. Yabus, Sabia, Merma, these are the heads of the families. No. Osin, he begot Abital, Aphthal, sons of Aphel, Obed, Misael. Samaria, he built Unan and Lud in its towns. Beriah, Sama, these were the heads of the families among the dwellers of Elam, and they drove out the inhabitants of Gath. These brothers were Sasek, Arimuth, Zabadiah, Ured, Adair, Mikael, Yasfa, Yadu, Yudah, sons of Beriah, and Zabadiah, and Musulam, and Azaki, and Abar. And Asamari. Yexlias, no. And Yakimi, Zachary, and Zabdi. So we got Zubab, sons of Elphael, and Yakim, Zachary, and Zabdi, and Elianai, Salathi, Ali, Adai, and Bariah, Samarath, sons of Samaith. Yesfan, Obed, and Aliel, Abdon, Zechri, Anan, Ananiah, Amri, Elam, Anathoth, Yathin, Yaphadias, Phanuel, the sons of Sosek, and Samsari, and Samarias, and Gothila, Yarasiah, Eriah, Zechri, son of Ruam. These were the heads of the families of chiefs according to their generations, those who dwelt in Jerusalem. And the father of Gabion dwelt in Gabion, and his wife's name was Mu'aka, and her firstborn name was Abdon, Sur, and Kish, and Baal, and Nadab, and Ner. And again, this is all like controversial because people will use this to say, so what's wrong with, they'll use this as a strong man argument. Why do you think Adonai is bad if they're calling one of their children Baal? So again, I seriously doubt they're calling one of their sons Baal in the original scriptures. I think stuff like this, after the Babylonian captivity, I think they started inserting certain words into the scripture. I don't think Baal any Hebrew in his right mind would call his son or daughter Baal. I don't know. That's I just think there would be no point in that. So what we got to realize too, we don't have the original scriptures, and we're dealing with a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. So somewhere down the line, these Babylonian traditions and coming back from Babylon 70 years later, they're going to start getting influenced by the pagans. And so I think that's where Baal comes in there, because rarely do you ever see that even in our modern versions as a name of a Hebrew. So that's very, very unlikely. Even with Adonai, I think when Adonai is used as part of someone's name, it's because their name is supposed to mean, like, for example, Adonijah, right? Solomon's brother. In Hebrew, that means Yahuwah is master or Yahuwah is Lord, because, like, Adoni means my master. So Adonis or Adoni means Lord or my master. So yes, Adonai is used in someone's name as part of someone's name, but they don't actually they don't use a name of a pagan god of itself to call their children that. Like, you're not going to see a Hebrew name their son Adonis. You're not going to see a Hebrew name their son Zeus or Baal or Ishtar, or so on and so forth. Usually that doesn't happen. Okay, so anyway. So I was at Abdon, Sur, Kish, Baal, Nadab, and Ner. Gedur and his brother, and Zakur, Malkaloth. So that's First Chronicles chapter 8. There's just a lot of genealogies here. There's not much to really like expound on there because it's just names. No. All right. So let me see here. There's one cross-reference they're claiming here for Zachar, that it could be Zechariah. Stretch. Yeah, I don't know about that. That's a little bit of a stretch. I don't know if they're trying to say that's the same person as the prophet Zechariah. I think that's probably a stretch. That footnote there. You're not going to see many footnotes for these genealogies. There's not much to really expound upon. We so far have went through Benjamin's genealogy, through Shaul here. I don't know. Is there anything to mention, Mom?
I don't think so, huh? I don't. It's all sort of matter of fact.
Yeah. So I guess we could have a third reader here for chapter 9. So this is genealogy of the return to exiles. Okay, so it's going to start picking up here. Now we're getting to the actual generation of the post-Babylonian captivity. So this would be okay. Brother Dennis, if you're feeling up to it, would you like to read chapter 9 for us?
Oh, let me see. I need to get in a better position to read here.
Okay.
Like 90, I think last time I checked.
Yeah, because I'm already sweating. I think it's
92,
okay.
yeah.
Let's see. Okay, that's interesting. I'll have to mention that after Dennis reads. You got a little timetable here.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Perfect, brother.
Okay. And all Yisrael registered themselves by genealogy. And see, they were written in the book of the sovereigns of Yisrael. And Yehuda was exiled to Babel for their trespass. And the first inhabitants who were in their possessions in their cities of Yisrael were the priests, the Levites, and the Nethinim. Okay. And in Jerusalem dwelt some of the children of Yehuda, and some of the children of Benjamin, and some of the children of Ephraim and Manasseh. Uthai, son of Ammihud, son of Omri, son of Imri, son of Bani, of the sons of Peretz, the son of Yehuda. And the Shalonites, Asaiah, the firstborn, and his sons. And of the sons of Zerub, Yeuel, and their brothers, 690. And the sons of Benjamin, Salu, son of Meshullam, son of Hodawah, son of Hasanua, and Yebnei, son of Yeroham, and Elah, son of Uzi, son of Mikri, and Meshullam, son of Shephatiah, son of Reuel, son of Yebneiah, and their brothers, according to their generations, 956. All these men were heads of the father's house and their father's houses. And of the priests, Yedaiah and Jehoiarib and Yechim. And Azariah, son of Hilkiah, son of Meshullam, son of Zadok, son of Meriah, son of Ahitub, the officer over the house of Alaim, and Adiah, son of Jeroham, son of Pashur, son of Milkiah, and Yaasi, son of Adael, son of Yahizerah, son of Meshullam, son of Meshillemith, son of Immer, and their brothers, heads of their fathers' houses, 1,760 able men for the work of the service of the house of Alaim. And of the Levites, Benaiah, son of Hashub, son of Azrikam, son of Hashabiah, of the sons of Merari, and Bakbakur, Teresh, and Galel, and Mattaniah, son of Micah, son of Zikri, son of Asaph, and Obadiah, son of Shemaiah, son of Galel, son of Yehutham, and Berechiah, son of Asa, son of Elkanah, who dwelt in the villages of the Netophathlites, and the gatekeepers, Shalom, Akub, and Talman, and Ahinman, and their brothers, Shalom the chief. And up till then, they were gatekeepers for the camps of the children of Lewi at the Sovereign's Gate on the east. And Shalom, son of Kor, son of Ebiasaph, son of Korab, and his brothers from his father's house, and Korites were over the work of the service guards of the thresholds of the tent. And their fathers had been guards of the entrance to the camp of Yahuwah. And Phinehas, son of Eleazar, was leader over them in time past. Yahuwah was with him. Zechariah, son of Meshelemiah, was gatekeeper at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And all those chosen as gatekeepers at the thresholds were 212. They were registered by genealogy in their villages. David and Shemuel the seer appointed them to their office of trust. So they and their sons were over the gates of the house of Yahuwah, the house of the tent by watches. The gatekeepers were on the four sides, the east, west, north, and south, and their brothers and their villages had to come with them from time to time for 7 days. For the four chief gatekeepers were in their office of trust. They were Levites, and they were over the rooms and treasuries of the house of Elohim. And they spent the night all around the house of Elohim, because they had the duty, and they were open in morning by morning. And some of them were over the vessels of service, for they brought them in and took them out by count. And some of them were appointed over the vessels, even over all the vessels of the set-apart place, and over the fine flour, the wine, and the oil, and the incense, and the spices. And some of the sons of the priest blended and compounded the spices. And Messiah of the Levites, the firstborn of Shalom, the Korhite, was entrusted with the making of the flat cakes. And some of their brothers of the sons of the Kehathites were over the showbread to prepare every Sabbath. And these were the singers, heads of the fathers, houses of the Levites in the rooms, and were exempted from other duties. For they were employed in that work day and night. These heads of the fathers' houses of the Levites were heads throughout their generations. They dwelt in Jerusalem. And Yehiel, the father of Gibeon, whose wife's name was Maacah, dwelt at Gibeon. And his firstborn son was Abdon, then Zur, and Kish, Baal, and Ner, and Nadab, and Gabor, and Aho, and Zechariah, and Mikloth. And Mikloth brought forth Shimon, and they too dwelt alongside their relatives in Jerusalem and their brothers. And Ner brought forth Kish, and Kish brought forth Shaul, and Shaul brought forth Jonathan, and Melchishah, and Abinadab, and Ishbaal. And the son of Jonathan was Meribbaal, and Meribbaal brought forth Micah. And the sons of Micah, Shithon, and Melech, and Terah, and Ahaz, who brought forth Yarah, and Yarah brought forth Elimeth, and Asmaweth, and Zimri. And Zimri brought forth Matzah. And Matzah brought forth Ben-ah, and Rephiah, it was his son. Elisha, his son. Etishah, his son. Etzel, his son. And Etzel had 6 sons whose names were these: Azrikam, Buckru, and Yishmael, and Shariah, Obadiah, Hanan. These were the sons of Etzel. Wow. And it's hard to pronounce some of these names.
Oof, yeah. That was a pretty lengthy one there. Brother, I think your hand was up. Did you add something you wanted to share?
No, I think I got lost. For some reason I thought we were in First Chronicles 9.
Oh yeah, we are.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, my stupid cursor kept screwing up. I had to
Okay, then
put it
I think the issue is that I think the Masoretic Chronicles has a lot of extra verses added in, because I was way off there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. What I saw at the end is there's a header on a lot of these translations that says, to your point, that says, Shaul's genealogy retold. So I think to your point, the Masoretic decided to add at the end like 10 extra verses or whatever. Because at the end, you'll see like in the ISR, it'll say, let's see here, where does it start here? It's like a header. Here we go. From like 35 all the way down is like a retold genealogy of Saul we already went through, where it's like summarized. So yeah, I think they added like 9 verses there. It would seem if they already went through these guys from Saul's genealogy, then that would have been added. Go ahead, brother.
I think that also I would like to go compare those two at another time, but I think a lot of those verses have added content to them as well.
Yeah. So what was weird too is that I think what confuses things too is they're trying to combine all the genealogies of the returning captives so quickly. Like in one chapter, they're like combining basically all the genealogy of these guys coming back from Babylon. So they're trying to combine what you see. I'm surprised there's no cross reference being mentioned here. Let me see something real quick. So usually you would have something from Ezra cross referenced here. I know there's supposed to be a genealogy. Yeah, here we go. Nehemiah. So we got Nehemiah 7:5, 764, 262. So like what I would recommend for people that are just reading this chapter for the first time is like cross-reference this whole chapter 9 with these other references, and you'll probably get a better understanding. Ezra 2 and Nehemiah 7 is supposed to have a more isolated genealogy of this generation that's coming back from Babylon. So that would be my recommendation. You got something else, brother, or is that an old hand?
Old hand, but I might put it back up here again in a minute.
Okay. All right. So yeah, there's other than that, I don't know what else to reference. I know that there were certain other things that kind of jumped out to me. Like, I think we were talking about this a while ago with me, my mom, and Marissa about um, why Yahusha says what he says about the plucking of the grain. And he says, if you really want to get technical, the Levites work on the Sabbath and they're considered blameless. We see some of the duties they had to do. That's mentioned in this genealogy. I think a certain isolated family here in the genealogy is responsible for setting out the showbread every Sabbath. So that's work. You're making sure the showbread is ready. You know, they would be baking, they would be offering sacrifices and this and that.
Size, because if it was
Yeah.
the eighth
So
day,
that's considered work. And even the Pharisees did not like the fact that they were fine with, the funny thing was the Pharisees were fine with circumcising someone on the Sabbath, but they got mad when Yahusha healed someone. Like, which more is doing work? You're actually doing a physical work where you yourself, the priest, are having to circumcise the baby, flesh its foreskin. That's a physical work versus just speaking to someone after healing them. Oh, go pick up your mat, which is more laborious. Go ahead, brother.
So here are some of the examples of the differences between the LXX and the Masoretic. You have in First Chronicles 9, verse 13, you have the Masoretic saying 1,760 mighty men of valor for the work of the service of the house of Elua, while the LXX just says 1,760 able men for the work of the service of the house of Elua. I think the LXX, it makes more sense because you have them returning from captivity. There's no point in needing mighty men of valor. There's no war going on at the moment. That's one of them. Um,
Huh. Let me see here.
LXX in First Chronicles 9:20 is missing. Not necessarily missing, and that Masoretes could have added it, but the Masoretic says, "And Yahuwah was with them," right at the end of it, where the 8:6 doesn't.
Okay, let's see here. Yeah, so yeah, it's very possible. The weird thing is that they leave out something like they change the numbers. I wonder why they would change the number of men.
Oh
That
no, it's the
is
same 1,760. It's the same number. It's just one says mighty men of valor, where the LXS X says able men.
Oh man, my mom can't ever be quiet, can't ever do something quietly. She's got stuff falling all over her nightstand here. All right. Yeah. Okay. Let me see here. Okay, so yeah. Um uh, who was the chief? Yeah. Huh.
You have verse, where'd it go? Um, you have verse 22. You have the Masoretes adding in Samuel. The LXX says David appointed them in their trust. Masoret say David and Samuel appointed them in their trust.
Hmm.
I don't think Samuel was making decisions like that.
What's weird is the LXX, or at least the translation of it, has it there. That's the weird part. So you have the Bretons saying almost the same thing as the ESV. David and Samuel, the seer, established them in their office of trust. Breton says these. David and Samuel, the seer, have established in their charge. So it's almost the same thing. I wonder if Breton added that in there then. It shouldn't. It's not in the Septuagint, then it shouldn't be. Which version of the Septuagint do you not see it in?
I'm actually all on ChatGPT right now. So it says that Britain's LXX, David and Samuel the seer, established them in their charge. This matches the Masoretic text and on surface appears to contradict earlier claim that LXX omits Samuel. Oh. Okay, so I guess some of it does have it. Codex Vaticanus has it. Codex Alexandrinus has it.
Doesn't.
Codex Sinaiticus.
Sinaiticus. Yeah, Sinaiticus is a little weird. There's certain things that, yeah. I'm trying to remember how old the Sinaiticus is. And that's the one that's kind of supposed to be, some claim is a forgery. Or at least the New Testament part is claimed to be a forgery. The Sinaiticus, the Westcott Hort guys, they claim to have found the Codex Sinaiticus at a monk's monastery or whatever, and all that. So there's been like a lot of. Let me just see here where compare the datings of some of these. I know all these are from the 300s, but I think the Alexandrinus I would trust over the Sinaiticus only because I think it's extremely fragmented and it's older. Let me see here. The Alexandrinus, or the Alexandrian manuscript, is like goes back to like one of the original. Yeah,
No, I think it's there in all the Septuagints. I should have double checked before speaking. I think
okay, it's all
yeah, I
good.
made it there.
It's all tube, brother. It's all tube. Yeah, the sign just as my personal opinion, Sinaiticus, if there ever is a variant between the three manuscripts, I would trust the Sinaiticus the least. And I'll share with you guys. Let me see if I can find that video again. I'll leave that link to why I definitely like to look at all three LXX manuscripts because the Sinaiticus seems to be a forgery. Let's see, I lied to you about the Codex Sinaiticus. So Sinaiticus is mainly what the Westcott Hort people use for the New Testament portion of it, at least. They mainly use. There's just been, I think this is the video. So I'm gonna leave you guys this link and you can check it out for yourself. Again, I don't promote this guy. He just provided information about it. So this is why if that was ever true and someone ever brought out to me that Sinaiticus has something the Vaticanus and the other 2 or 3 manuscripts don't, I would trust those over the Sinaiticus almost 100% of the time, just because there's a lot of controversy surrounding the Sinaiticus, whether it was a legitimate manuscript or not. Supposedly, according to this guy, this barbarian KJV guy, born again barbarian, he claims, according to the books that he has in the video, that basically that the story of the finding the Codex Sinaiticus in a monastery and how it was supposedly preserved. And it's a very mystical story they give, that Westcott and Hort give, about the Sinaiticus. And it's very questionable whether it's a real manuscript or not, or whether it was a forgery, because supposedly what happened was that it was part of a Gnostic Bible that actually included the Epistle of Barnabas, was one of the other Gnostic Gospels that was part of the manuscript. And it's basically what he's trying to say, and according to the guy's books that he promotes in the video, that according to their research, there it seems like it was a forgery, like it wasn't legitimate. So that's why, like when studying the Septuagint, I'm very careful to use the Sinaiticus as a like my primary source for the LXX, because I don't know how corrupted that source is. I don't know if the Gnostics were messing with things. They've there's already proof they were messing with the New Testament stuff in the Codex Sinaiticus. There's already proof of that just by looking at the Westcott Hort text. You can see it, if they are basing it mostly on the Sinaiticus versus the Vulgate, and they what do they call it, reliably translated it, then you got some big issues with the Codex Sinaiticus. So that's why I'm a little weary with trusting it, as the sole source for my LXX. That's why I like to go to the Vaticanus. I like to go to the Alexandrinus, whatever source. I forget if the Alexandrinus is what the Lexham used, or the Lexham English Septuagint used. I forget which one they use. I think they would have used one of the Alexandrian ones, because there's certain readings that only older fragmented versions of the LXX still have, like Genesis 6:4, for example. Like a lot of the more modern LXX versions will say sons of Elohim, rather than messengers, of Elohim, Angelos Theos. The original Alexandrian manuscript says. So there's that's what gets tricky too, and kind of scares people off about the Septuagint. There's multiple families of the LXX. You have the Sinaiticus, Alexandrinus, Vaticanus. Vaticanus, I think, like most scholars seem to trust in the Vaticanus as the main one. That's why Breton uses the Vaticanus and all that. That seems to be the main one people trust in. Because I think supposedly it's the oldest out of all three, even though they're all from the 3rd century. I think Vaticanus might be 20, 30 years before the Sinaiticus. So, yeah, just be careful with the Sinaiticus. That's all I'm going to say. Be very careful. Look into that video if you're interested. He mentions the authors of the books that he gets his research from and why he came to his conclusion. A lot of the story of the Westcott and Hort is just it's very mysterious. It's very Kabbalistic sounding. It's like they were, it's almost like they're trying to promote that they were chosen by God to find this long lost manuscript that somehow, was destined for the fire, but never got thrown into the fire. This is very weird. It's a very weird story, and I think there's an agenda behind it. But anyway, long story short, anyway, but yeah, so that's a tube thing though, that all three LXXs in that verse actually agree with the Masoretic. That's actually a positive thing. But just be careful, guys. That's why I use multiple Septuagints. I don't just use one translation. Because even with the Septuagint, it's not just one family. You got 3 main branches in the Septuagint family. So anyway. And then you got other fragments that are from different manuscript families of the LXX. So it's just like any other manuscript. There's going to be manuscript families within that manuscript. Even the Masoretic. So when people want to say to you, oh, don't trust in the Septuagint, there's 3 or 4 different versions. Okay, well, so is the Masoretic. You also have the Westminster Leningrad Codex, which is one version. You have the Aleppo Codex, which is also based on. And to be honest with you guys, even the Masoretes themselves admitted that they did not base their Masoretic I'm getting tongue tied here. Masoretic text on one manuscript. In their own writings, they have admitted that it was a collection of manuscripts. And so it's even harder to pinpoint Masoretic text versus Septuagint where they got their stuff from in the Masoretic text, because they're admitting that they had all these different manuscripts, available to them, and it was like a mishmash type of thing. So at least with the Septuagint, we know the original source where it went from. We know that the original Septuagint was translated from most likely the original Paleo Hebrew Tanakh, and it was translated straight into Greek. With the Masoretic text, there's less information about that, so you don't even know really what the original source maybe have been. Just from my research, it looks like they use so many different manuscripts and traditions, and even oral traditions to get their understandings. The way they interpreted certain verses, and they actually put their interpretation into the text and all that. So in certain verses where it's not in any other version, it's just their interpretation. Like, for example, Isaiah 63 verse 9. They either would have took that from the Targums, which you already see it in the Targums that it changes from saying Yahuwah himself to the messenger of his presence saved them. The Targum already of Isaiah, way before the Masoretic text, already had it changed to that at that point. So they probably were using one of the Targums of Isaiah to get that understanding of that corruption. But like the Septuagint, and I would argue the Dead Sea Scrolls version probably does not say the angel of his presence. I seriously doubt it. So they're and again, they admit they did not have the original Paleo Hebrew scriptures. They admit it. So anyway, but you know what? I might as well share that link with you guys right now, just so I have these things later. I should be able to just go to our Telegram here. Telegram's been acting weird today on my desktop. I don't know if I need a update or something, because it loads and then it never loads. It just says loading, loading, loading. I don't know what's going on with Telegram today. Let me see here. I'm gonna look this up real quick though, guys, because this is important for other people to have that are looking into these things. So the Masoretes admitted they did not have the original Hebrew scriptures. Here we go. It's called Preachers Institute. And for those of you that have never looked into the Septuagint, I really recommend you go onto this link. There's a lot of good historical information. He mentions the Dead Sea Scrolls and the differences in the Masoretic versus the Dead Sea Scrolls, and how the Dead Sea Scrolls, even though they don't 100% of the time agree with the LXX, a lot of the time they do. So there's even pictures of the manuscripts here, and supposedly the Masoretic is actually missing something in Psalms 145. That's one of the points he brings to, that they definitely did not have the original Hebrew scriptures. So it's a very, very straight to the point article. So he starts off by saying, I used to believe, just like pretty much everyone in Christianity, that the Masoretic text was the perfect copy of the original Old Testament. I'm pretty sure you've heard similar language, King James only people, okay. I used to believe that the Masoretic text was how Yahuwah divinely preserved the Hebrew scriptures throughout the ages. I was wrong. Now, I don't want people losing their faith in the scriptures. It's still the scriptures, but the idea that Yahuwah would not allow scribes to corrupt the scriptures is not a biblical idea. It's just not. And we know for a fact in prophecy, Jeremiah 8:8 says that the false pen of the scribes has worked falsehood. Obviously, at some point, that's going to be fulfilled from the book of Jeremiah. And obviously, at some point, you had scribes who were selfishly trying to change the scriptures. The oldest copies of the Masoretic text, so he goes on to talk about how, like we've said so many times on different studies, the Masoretic text doesn't go past 1000 AD or 900 AD. Okay. So that would be nearly 1,000 years or more after the time of Messiah. And these texts differ from the originals many specific ways. The Masoretic text is named after the Masoretes. Most of us know all that. Okay, so it was compiled between 7th century AD, 11th to 11th century AD, which would be like between a 700 to 1,000 or 1100 AD. It was compiled to ensure that the modern Jewish text would manifest a notable departure from the original Hebrew scriptures. Now, this is what a lot of people don't understand. And I know me and brother Yahusha is a witness to me about this when we explain to our fellow mishpach out there. They don't understand this. It's not just about the vowel points, guys. The vowel points is just like what you call the tip of the iceberg with this. They're yeah. Okay, I'm gonna drink water. Calm down. All right. Jeez. So anyway, but the one of the things that most people don't know about the differences is that the Masoretic text on purpose by its author is departing from the original Paleo-Hebrew scriptures, meaning theology, meaning messianic prophecy, meaning how you keep Torah, okay? All of that took on a rabbinical spin when the Masoretic text was being created. So historical research reveals the significant ways in which the Masoretic text is different from the original Tanakh or Old Testament, meaning the Torah of Moshe, the original Torah of Moshe.
So,
Now,
Brother Doug, is the vowel points that you're talking about, are those something that we should consider or no?
No, I don't believe that's something we should consider, mainly because before the Masoretes came around and before rabbinical Judaism came around, they were not using those vowel points. Those vowel points were created for nefarious purposes. Now, Judaism will say that the Masoretes meant well, that they were their whole spiel that rabbinical Judaism today tells you, which there's no way for them to know that this is the real purpose, because the Masoretes never said this was the real purpose, but they'll say that it was to make sure you can pronounce the language correctly. There's no proof historically whatsoever that was the intentional purpose. Furthermore, those vowel points eventually got people to say Adonai in place of Yahuwah's name. So where you had the brackets of the Tetragrammaton, because of those little dots and dashes, Judaism was teaching their people not to speak Yahuwah's name. And that's the original origin of those dots and dashes, the Nikud system. It was not about pronouncing it the right way. I know guys like Nehemiah Gordon will lie to people. He'll say, oh, it was to pronounce, Yehovah correctly. That's all garbage. That's all lies. That's all garbage. There's no proof to that. The whole purpose of the little dots and dashes, the vowel points, was so you didn't pronounce the name at all. So you were supposed to understand those dots and dashes are supposed to make you vocalize Adonai instead of Yahuwah's name every time Yahuwah's name came up. So when they would read the scriptures in the synagogue, and this is historically proven, guys. This is backed up by Encyclopedia Britannica. This is backed up by real history. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I know. My sister and I were going to learn Hebrew, and this was before we knew about the difference between the Babylonian Hebrew, or what they call the New Hebrew, and the Paleo Hebrew. And we got study documents and all this stuff, and they would vowel point something to alert you that the name was coming up and not to pronounce the name. They would do that. They all kinds of Babylonian crap and that. So we decided, why would we want to learn this just to unlearn it, to learn the real language?
Well, you know, John Flores taught us about the vowel points, and he felt that they were necessary to be able to pronounce some of the words.
Well, the first thing you need to do is get away from the Babylonian Hebrew. Just get away from it, learn the Paleo, and you're far better off, because the Paleo Hebrew will tell you we should scream the Yahweh's name from the rooftops, and they will not pronounce it. Yeah, we saw so many things.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brother Yahusha.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the first person to start presenting, at least widely, presenting the name Yehovah would have been Nehemiah Gordon. Am I wrong on that, or am I right?
Yeah, well, I would say in modern times, definitely. I don't know historically whether he was the first individual to ever do it, but definitely I would say if we're going to talk about like the 21st century, yeah, he's definitely in this modern age the main guy. Maybe I don't even know if he's the first, but he's the main guy out there that teaches it, that says that it's correct, because and he goes by the Nikud system. So I mean, again, you're going by that false understanding that it was used to help you pronounce things. Nowhere does the Masoretes ever tell that. They never say that. It's like a presumption at best that that's why they created the vowel points. But what we do know is that in many of their Talmudic books, like the Talmud itself, it says don't pronounce the name. It says you don't teach the Goyim the name. You don't have them pronounce it. And from what I understand, there's way more historical backing to the understanding that these vowel points were put there so you don't pronounce things, rather than it was a way to point to pronunciation. The whole reason people get the whole Elohim, Yahweh, or Yehovah, or anything with an E sound is based on the, if I'm not mistaken, is based on the false premise that the vowel points were there to help you pronounce things. When if you read the Talmud for yourself, they don't care about the Goyim pronouncing things. They don't want them to have their scriptures. They don't want them to have the Torah. They like it's like a whole revisionist history thing. I'll just show people, for people that have never seen this before. I'll go to encyclopedia just to show you guys this is physical evidence that this understanding historically of what happened with Yahuwah's name. Let's see, Encyclopedia Britannica. Okay, so Encyclopedia Britannica here actually mentions that even using Elohim as a name is from the Talmud. Okay, so I'll just skim down here because I don't want to be wasting too much time here. The Masoretes who from the 6th century to the 10th century, referring to, what we were talking about, 700 to 1000 AD, were to reproduce the original text. That's not what they did. And we'll go back to that link to prove that's not what they did. They didn't have the original text. They added to YHWH the vowel signs of the Hebrew words for Adonai or Elohim. Latin-speaking Christian scholars replaced the Y, which does not exist in Latin. I wouldn't go so far as to say replace. It's more like translate. There is no Y in Latin. But the I is a Y. I spoke to a sister about this morning. If you take IE in Latin, it has a Y sound. So even if you have, like right in the Tyndale Bible, Yahuwah's name is spelled Iehouah, still phonetically is Yahuwah. Or technically they were already corrupting it to Yehuwah or whatever. But the point is that it's still the name Yahuwah. Okay, just because it's a I instead of a J, whatever, argument there, or I instead of a Y. The I in Latin, IE in Latin, still gives off the yod sound. So I don't know what they're trying to say here, but anyway. But the point is here, historically in this article, it's showing that Adonai and Elohim substituting Yahuwah's name with this is the reason for the vowel points. So anyone that says to you, oh, Yehovah, it's correct because of the vowel points, no, that wasn't the purpose of the vowel points. And you can go into the Talmud to prove them wrong. Their own Talmud shows that they didn't want anyone like pronouncing Yahuwah's name at all. They didn't want his name vocalized is the point. So anyone that tries to use the vowel points to say that it's supposed to be Yehovah or Yeshua, they're missing the point. The point was to make it so you're not pronouncing the names. That's the purpose. The purpose is not for you to use those vowel points to point to a correct pronunciation. That's not why those vowel points were made. So unless someone, unless someone can prove me wrong with historical evidence that the Masoretes themselves intended to use it for pronunciation of the name, I'll repent. And I mean that. I'm saying this on the record here, guys. I'll repent if you can show me historical evidence that at any point the Masoretes used them for a genuine reason to pronounce the name. I will be shocked and I'll have to repent. But the point of the matter is that the Talmud says otherwise. It says that you're not supposed to utter the name. It's inutterable. That's the only point of the vowel points. As far as Yahuwah's name is concerned, it's now the Nukud system of itself is just a made up vowel pointing system. There was no such thing as there in the original Hebrew scriptures. Go ahead, brother. I don't know if that's old hand or new hand.
So apparently the first two people to use the variant Yehovah were a Catholic scholar, Petrus Galatinus, in 1518, and then William Tyndale in 1530. So you had a Catholic, and then you had a Christian.
Awesome.
They were the first two people to
Yeah.
use that. And then today we have what's his face, Nehemiah Gordon. And why would you listen to someone who denies Messiah? Unless, of course, you believe that the Ashkenazis are actually the people and actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Which I respect a lot of his understanding on certain things of the Hebrew language. I can respect him for that, but I don't, like you said, I don't respect him on his opinion on the New Testament. I'm not going to respect him on theology as a whole, because he also believes that the Masoretic text somehow is originally preserved from the original Hebrew scriptures. And when people bring up Jeremiah 8:8 to him, he likes to dance around the issue. I'm like, it says that they worked a lying pen, meaning the scriptures at some point were getting tainted. So for you to say that the Masoretic text that did not exist until 1000 AD, okay, that's only not even that long ago, because the 1600s was the Middle Ages, okay, so 1000 AD, 600 years earlier, was when the Masoretic text was first written. The original manuscript of the Masoretic text is 1000 AD. Okay, so for him to say that that's the original scriptures, to me, that's you've lost all credibility as a scholar. You've lost all credibility as a researcher of the manuscripts. But I digress. So, but this guy here, this Preacher Institute guy, he brings out a lot of good points here. Just by looking at the different manuscripts, this is the conclusions that if you have eyes to see, ears to hear from Yahuwah, or just you're a decent researcher, no less, you should be able to come to these conclusions. The Masoretes admitted, now this is what I was talking about before, they in their own words, in their own books, admitted that they received a corrupted text to begin with. Meaning that Whatever they would have used for their Masoretic text was not the original scriptures. The Masoretic text is written with a radically different alphabet than the original. Again, not the original Paleo-Hebrew. So a lot of people miss this. They say, oh, well, it's just, it is the original Hebrew, but it has vowel points. No, guys. They're using a modern box script Babylonian Hebrew. Okay, the text of itself, even without vowel points, was used a vastly different Hebrew language that is nothing like the original. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Okay, so that means the some of the words might have different meanings. And again, that's why you see variances with the LXX that's translated from the original Hebrew language. From, well, maybe not the original, because Brother Yahusha has pointed out to me that it seems like the original Hebrew language in the garden was probably pictograph, not paleo. But when I say original Hebrew, I'm talking about the Paleo Hebrew scripture. So that's what I mean. The LXX was translated directly, firsthand source, from the Paleo Hebrew scriptures. The Masoretic wasn't. Okay. They added vowel points which did not exist in the original. When Sister Marissa was asking about this earlier, according to this guy's research, that Nikud system did not exist until the Masoretes. Did not exist at all in the Hebrew language, in the original Hebrew language. Okay, the Masoretic text included several books. They excluded several books from the Old Testament scriptures. Okay, he's talking about the Apocrypha. You know, I would kind of, that's a whole nother ball game, whether every apocryphal book was in the original LXX. I really don't know about that. We don't know about that. Canons were not decided, I don't think, as early as 300 BC. We don't really know what would have been considered scripture past the Tanakh and Brit back then, other than maybe, you know, one book here or there. Like I'm assuming they considered Enoch scripture because of what Jude says, using Enoch for his book. But there's like a lot of the Apocrypha, standard Apocrypha that you see in the King James Bible. Some of those books are very questionable. I don't think they would have had Tobit personally. I don't think they would have had some of those books as part of the Septuagint. So that's kind of conjectural, the fourth point there. But the fifth point I think is very valid. It says the Masoretic text includes changes to prophecy and doctrine. To me, that's the biggest point. You know, put language to the side, put Apocrypha to the side, put other things to the side. To me, the biggest number one change is prophecy and doctrine. That's the biggest problem with the Masoretic text. Why it's not my main Bible for the Old Testament. That's why. So, and then he goes through proving with historical quotes and research here why all these points he brings up are true. Okay, so he brings up actual historical evidence. Some of these pictures are even physical evidence, like they're pictures of manuscripts. Okay, so I really recommend people that are, you know, just hearing about the Septuagint now. Like here's an example right here, guys. This is not just vowel points. These are completely different, like, characters. Okay, these are completely two different languages when you compare them. So that's the point he's bringing up. That okay, it's a radically different alphabet. Okay, which to my research has Germanic influence, Goyim influence, you know, Gentile influence with the modern Hebrew language. I was explaining to a sister this morning. It's like if you were to combine the modern Hebrew box script with Germanic influence, that's what Yiddish is today. Yeah. So that's what Yiddish is. It's not just pure Hebrew. It's Hebrew mixed with German. And it's modern Hebrew, Babylonian Hebrew mixed with German. So again, when people say, oh, Hebrew's better than Greek, I would maybe agree with you if you're talking about the language of Eden or you're talking about the original Paleo-Hebrew. Maybe I'd agree with you. But don't reject something just because it's not Hebrew when your argument is, well, you're talking about what they call now so-called biblical Hebrew, okay? Because that language is nothing like the original Hebrew language. And trust me, there's heathen influence in that language just as much as the Greek. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Adonai, for example, there was no Adonai, and you can look this up for yourself, guys. The word Adonai was never in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Never. So you have one word in the modern Hebrew that was never there to begin with. You have, I think, El Shaddai, if I'm not mistaken, was never in the Dead Sea Scrolls. You got certain titles that they use for the Most High that some might even go back to pagan origins in the Masoretic text that were never there in the original Paleo-Hebrew. So when people say to me, oh, yeah, I trust the Hebrew, I'm like, okay, which Hebrew? Because if you're going to say that, oh, I'm trusting the Babylonian Hebrew over Koine Greek, it's kind of like they're equal as far as which one is more set apart. They're kind of equal. They both have some type of influence, okay? And the difference with the Septuagint is there's no Greek influence for the most part in the Septuagint because the authors, they, even though they were translating it into Greek, they made a rule that if there's a word that was not equivalent, they would use a Greek word that had the matching meaning of the Hebrew so that it was at least equivalent to the meaning of the verse. So they were very serious. They were catering the Greek language to the Hebrew scriptures. They were making the Koine Greek or whatever original Greek they would have used to conform to the original Hebrew Tanakh. So a lot of people, they get these false ideas of Hellenization that the Septuagint's Hellenized. I have not seen one verse where it's Hellenized. One verse. So again, there's no proof to these accusations of people that just want to stay with the Masoretic text. But anyway, okay, so and he talks about as a Hebrew scholar his viewpoint on this subject. So I guess he's also been a scholar of the Hebrew language as well. So this is a very good link. I would advise to share it with anyone that is interested in this topic, that wants to look into this topic, and they're already looking to it. Please share this with people. Okay, so this is a very thorough article. Go ahead, brother.
Hold hands.
Okay. So anyway, guys, but that's about it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this little extra bit of historical commentary. And again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. I can give you guys more historical information. Why I am so I am unapologetic biased with the Septuagint over the Masoretic for the majority of the time. As long as there's nothing really weird, I usually go with the Septuagint like 90-95% of the time. But anyway, so and actually too, if you guys are already looking into that topic and you want to know about the messianic prophecies and stuff like that, we did a video, I think it's called Conspiracy to Remove Yahusha from the Messianic Prophecy. So you can check that video out on our ministry page on YouTube, Awakened by Yahuwah Assembly. So you should be able to find that there. I'm going to try my best. I think I have it already in a playlist, but if not, I'll try to get it into one of the Septuagint playlists so it's easy to find. So anyway, Shabbat Shalom, all of our brothers and sisters in Yahuwah and in Yahusha out there. Have a great rest of your day. And for the regular viewers and listeners, thank you for tuning in. And Shalom.